Look, I'm a scientist. I look at evidence, and I try to reason from evidence. Okay? I find that there is significant evidence that what we call our mind, our consciousness, our soul, doesn't stop at the death of the body.
Doesn't stop, so the survival of consciousness after death?
Exactly. There is a lot of evidence for this, and it's important to understand how the brain is related to our consciousness, to our mind.
Can you give me just one or two examples of scientific evidence?
I'll get to the evidence in a moment. Let me just tell you the basic concept that we all operate with in the modern world. It has not been so in the past, and it has not been so in some other cultures. But the modern concept is that the mind, or consciousness, or soul, or spirit, or whatever you call it, is generated by the brain. Now, how is that possible? Sort of. How can a set of neurons firing in a complex sequence generate my sense of perception, of love, of feeling? How can it generate the color red that I perceive? How can it generate the values that I hold, you see? So this is what's called the hard problem in consciousness research. What I'm saying is that something that I'll tell you in a moment, that William James, the great philosopher and psychologist, has already said at the end of the 19th century, in 1899, he gave a lecture on immortality. And he said that maybe the brain doesn't generate consciousness, maybe it transmits it. A big, big difference. Now let me give you an example of what generates would mean. I call this the turbine theory. The turbine theory is that when you start running a turbine, operating a turbine, it generates electricity. When the turbine stops, the electricity flow stops. Okay? So people say this is how the brain operates. But as long as the brain operates, it generates consciousness. When the brain stops, even temporarily, sometimes people have temporary brain dead, near-death experiences, or permanently, when they die. Okay? And then consciousness stops. So they say, therefore, it's obvious that the brain is generating consciousness. Couldn't be any other way. But this has two basic problems. One, consciousness doesn't necessarily stop when the brain stops, and there's evidence for this, we can talk about this. And the second is that even if consciousness would disappear when the brain doesn't work, it doesn't mean that the consciousness was generated by the brain. Think of this program. I assume many of our listeners will be sitting at home or someplace and looking at this program. And they are seeing it displayed on their TV monitors. Now, if you turn off the monitor, they won't see the program anymore. Would they say that therefore the program doesn't exist? We still sit here. We still broadcast the program, Even if you don't see it, it still exists, okay? So just that means that your transmitter is shut off doesn't mean that the whole thing is stopping, It means that you no longer perceive it, no longer is manifest. So what I'm saying is, if there is any chance, and I think there is, that the consciousness, the soul, the spirit survives the brain, it's because the brain doesn't generate it, it transmits it. See? So that is the big, big difference in the modern and in the Western common sense and in the traditional and now newly rediscovered scientific concept.
Okay, but survival of consciousness after death, because many people don't believe even in the consciousness surviving, let alone the doubts they might have about the possibility of physical immortality. But I know you've done some studies that actually have documented the survival of consciousness after death.
Well, I have very good news on that score. But let me just say, in light of this argument, what I can tell everybody, because I become convinced of it, that we are immortal. But by we, I mean our mind, our consciousness, our identity, which is associated with our body. But we are not just our body. Our body is which manifests our mind, our consciousness. It cannot be reduced to it. It's just like this program is not reduced to the television set by which you see it. It exists in the world. Let me give you a couple of examples. In my book on the immortal mind, there may be about 5 dozen examples. So let me just choose more or less randomly one, okay? How mind could survive the brain. I'm talking about a chess game, okay? Now, there was a man in England who was a great chess fan. And he was very eager to know whether it is possible for the mind to survive the body. And so he asked a renowned medium, a trance medium. It so happened this man, we know his name, we know exactly when it happened. He doesn't know anything about chess. He was not interested in chess. He didn't know what it is. He just knew it's a game, you know. And he asked him sort of to broadcast on the spirit internet, as it were, that he would like to ask for somebody from the other side to engage in a game of chess with a living chess player, okay? Somebody replied. It happened to be a gentleman whom I appreciate very much because I was born in Hungary and he was a Hungarian chess master. He was a third-ranking grand chess master called Géza Radnóci, okay? Then this man who commissioned the study asked the living grand chess master, Vladimir Korchnoi, the third-ranking chess master, grand chess master in that particular moment at that time, and they engaged in a game of chess. And this Géza Radnóci agreed to play. Only he has been dead for 100 years. You see? Now, a chess game played the same way that this medium would get the message from Korchnoi, the living grand chess master, go from C2 to C5, something like that. You know, the chess players have all the squares on the chess play numbered like this. And so he would make the move. And everybody who could watch this, and they recorded this, followed this game, okay? On the other side, he received a message, channeled from this dead chess master, you see. What do you play now? And they kept playing. They kept playing for 2 years because there have been intermissions, interruptions. Sometimes they couldn't get the channeling done. Sometimes the living chess master had other things to do. But they kept playing for 2 years. And after about a move 45 or so, the Géza Radnóci, the dead chess master, said, "Now I surrender, I give up." And then the experts deduced that after 5 moves later, the living chess master would have given checkmate, actually. So he knew it in advance. What was so remarkable, that not only that the medium who channeled this didn't know anything about chess, but also nobody who was alive to whom could have perhaps by ESP somehow, you know, got this information, would know it as much because this dead chess master exhibited precisely the style of play that this chess master at the time
I've been laughing because I'm reminded of the famous quote of Einstein, God does not play dice with the universe, but apparently he does play chess.
But this chess is not random. This is a highly organized.
It's I mean, whether we call it the mind of God or this particular individual consciousness. Because one of the things that Dr. Shah has explained to me in previous programs is his concept of the Tao. In a sense, all immortals become one. And all knowledge vests in the beginning and the end in the Tao.
That is why I think today it's so important as a rediscovery of a concept, that consciousness or spirit in the world is one.
Yes.
Like you say, Tao.
Yeah.
There has been many things. There's a great physicist, Erwin Schrödinger.
Yes.
I'm very pleased because the same first name as I do. He said, consciousness doesn't exist in the plural. There's only one consciousness. Every consciousness we have is a manifestation or a projection of that.
Well, if I can interrupt a second, the definition of immortality on one level then, which is very good news for the viewers, is we are all immortal in that we're all part and participants in the universal consciousness, which is eternal.
That is precisely the point I'm making in my book. And in my previous book and in my next book, because this is, I think, what you could call the secret. This is the grand rediscovery that has been known by the tradition of Lao Tse, has been known in the East, and is being rediscovered. There is only one mind. We are part of it. Therefore, we, as a mind, are immortal. We change our bodies. See, but our jobs, sooner or later, whether it's 880 years, or 114 years, or 100 years, or sometimes less, mostly less, we disappear as a body. But our mind continues its journey in the cosmos, and it can enter another body. See, this is an ancient wisdom as well. There is many evidence. You talk about evidence. Lately, they have come up with some fascinating evidence of children in various parts of the world, but mostly in Asia. Children who have so-called, what they call intermission memories. Now, many children seem to have memories of another personality, and they say that if they reincarnated in it. But very, very few, until recently, and this has been recently discovered, that there are a set of children, they come between the ages of 3 and 6. After that, these memories fade, you know. At 15, they disappear completely. But if that time, the children are asked, and they're not just being told they just talk stupidity or in fantasy, but you really listen to it seriously. Some children say, how come they were born to these parents? You see, what happened before they were born? They have these so-called intermission memories. This is documented. I'm documenting it also in my books, you see. So I don't think there is any doubt to my mind that our mind is immortal.
But Dr. Laszlo is providing a scientific or some scientific evidence that reincarnation is documentable.
It is.
And based on the theory of one universal consciousness, almost predictable.
I have, of course, a much more detailed theory than that. Okay. It involves holography, how the whole cosmos. This is just to add this very important element. In the latest theory of quantum cosmology, the space-time itself is a creation from a deeper level, from the hidden dimension, which you say is this blurred dimension which you were talking about. And it is created from there, and it emerges. Now, all the laws of nature, all the rules of the game, if you talk about chess, you know, the rules of the game, they don't determine how the game is played, but they give you the rules. And all these are on this deeper dimension. So whatever mind or consciousness or spirit is in the world is in that hidden dimension. Plato called it the sphere of the forms and ideas, you know. The great physicist David Bohm has talked about the implicate order, you know, which gives form to the explicate order. So there is this rediscovery. You can be sure, I think, that our mind doesn't belong to the space-time surface of phenomena in the universe. We belong to a much deeper level. We were born and reborn, as Master Shaw has been talking about, and Dr. Rule, about how many times we have been born before. Because the we is this immortal mind, which is part of Tao, which is part of the Akasha that I have been talking about, you see. But it's the ancient wisdom rediscovered today. The universe is a deep, deep, infinitely deep sea, ocean, as it were. On its surface, it has manifestations. The body is a manifestation. This deep consciousness, which is really who we are, is part of that. And I fully agree with Master Shaw. Not only human beings, every atom, every plant, every animal, everything, every galaxy in the world participates in this deeper, immortal element in the world. The mortal part is the mechanistic, material part that comes and goes. Even the universe gets born and falls back into the so-called vacuum, which is this infinite energy sea. And then new universes are born. Everything cyclically goes through it. But what persists, what there is this deep mind, this deep energy, which you can call it in so many names, but it's ultimately what our concept of divinity, ultimately our concept of God. The consciousness that is not only in the world, but the consciousness that is the world. That it manifests itself in us. But we, as being part of that deep consciousness, we ourselves are immortal. The universe has memory. Everything that ever took place in space and time has a trace, can be recalled, almost like from the internet. You can call it up again. Yes. If you enter into it with the right frame of mind, if you have the right code, in a way, you can pick it up again. So tapping into this has been known in many names. Among other things, it has been known as reading the Akashic field. Reading the Akasha. Many people have this experience. Shirley MacLaine wrote a whole book about her experience of that. You know. And this is a very widespread experience. People read my books and are talking about the Akasha as the deepest reality, and they always write to me and say, but I have had this experience myself. You know. So we are talking about this level of finding oneself at home, finding oneself back in the universe as being part of it, and being able to contact any other part. Transpersonal psychologists and psychiatrists, like Stanislav Grof, for example, they put people into a slightly altered state of consciousness. And then they can pick up, they can connect with almost anything. Groff says anything that you can perceive with your senses, you can also perceive in this deep reality in a spontaneous way, because you can perceive it on the quantum level. Your brain operates also on this nanometer level that's been discovered by Roger Penrose and other people, so that there is scientific evidence. We can tap into this universal information field. You can call it the Tao, you can call it the Akasha, you can call it the Platonic form, you can call it the hidden dimension. You see, there are all these kind of many names, but the main point is that we are part of that. If we recognize this, if we realize this, we can become more whole. Then we can heal ourselves. And we can use this information like you do it, this sense of joining together, entering into the one mind, and you can heal with it. You see? So there is the level of the philosopher and scientist, which is mine, of understanding. And there's the level of the practitioner, which is also used, of using it to heal. But it's the same thing in a different form.